Good morning, everyone. I guess some bad news. The original speakers couldn't make it, so Sarah and I are going to fill in, if that's okay. My name is Tom Scott, and I hope you're all here for the presentation about our U.S. legal system and the state of disarray that it's in, and why we're here today that's what we're going to speak to you about. So, most people don't know who I am out here. Again, my name is Tom Scott. My background isn't in law. It isn't in the legal system. I'm actually an ex-engineer. I hold a U.S. patent. I'm the former world's top-rated fitness model. I tutor. I still act. So I do a whole variety of things. But I have two things in my life that I focus on. I focus on my passion, which is all of those things, and then I focus on my duty, which is why I'm here today. So that's pretty much about me. Let me, as far as introduction goes, turn this mic over to Sarah right now so you can find out a little bit about her.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Nahidi, and as Tom mentioned, we are here today because we feel very strongly that the U.S. legal system is in a position that needs to be changed dramatically. My background is that I'm an attorney, and I have been practicing law since 2010. It did not take me very long as a practicing attorney to realize that the system is not at all what we imagine it to be and what we see it on TV as a citizen, what we would expect from our legal system to do for us. So that's a little bit about me, and the point of why we wrote this book came about. I mean, we launched our project in 2016, but we were motivated to write this book long before then. And that motivation came from seeing that the justice system is not what we think it is, and we would like to change the system and make it a legal system that works for everyone, not the just us system. One that helps lawyers, cops, judges get away with corruption, murder, and incarcerating people wrongfully. Our agenda is nothing more than to help people, to empower them, to educate them, to help themselves, protect themselves, and ultimately improve the system.
Okay, so before we get too far along in here, first of all, how many people like my sweet New England accent?
Oh, yeah.
I get static from it, but some people say, wow, that's a cool accent. But anyhow, my neighbor doesn't like it too much. This is going to be like an interactive conversation. If you want to stop Sarah at any point, you have a question, feel free. There'll be questions and answers at the end. But I want this to be very informal, very relaxed atmosphere. Feel free to jump in if you have anything to add. If you think, we missed something or something comes to your mind, by all means, let us know. So, before we get too far, now we got a fairly small audience today. How many people in this room have been in the United States for 10 or more years, have had no interaction with the legal system? And by that I mean no parking tickets, no traffic tickets, no criminal accusations, no restraining orders, no small claims, no divorce, no class action suits that you're aware of, never been on a jury, never interacted with the legal system. How many people here? Exactly zero. Exactly zero. Now, we've had audiences about 70 to 100 people, and occasionally 5 hands will go up. This is telling, right? This is telling. Think about what I'm asking here. This is going to set the stage for the whole presentation. Everybody's affected by our system. Most of the times, it's not very good. So our mission, as Sarah said, we're here to educate you and protect you. That's why we're here today. plain and simple. We want to educate you. We want to protect you. With that in mind, understand that our legal system has become a self-aggrandizing system, an evil empire, criminal entity like the mafia, whatever you want to call it. It's not at all what the framers set it up to be, not even close. We compare it to a cancer. The legal system is like cancer in two different ways. Number one, you can't just say, well, I've never had cancer, I don't smoke, I don't do anything risky, therefore it's never going to affect me. I know somebody that, had cancer, they smoked, they were overweight, whatever they did, that's why they got cancer. The legal system can still impact you. In fact, it can strike nearly anyone at any time without that person doing anything wrong, immoral, illegal, whatsoever. And we're going to have some stories later to tell you exactly how that happened to people that we know. We also compare it to cancer because it has a tendency to spread. One legal case, small, even a traffic ticket, can spawn all these other cases in the system. And that's by design. The system we have today is designed to do that. Keep in mind, like I said, what we have today is nothing what the framers intended. This is not what they set up. These were brilliant men, possibly the greatest collection of intellect the world has had in government, before or since. We can't compare them to anyone else. In fact, I'd probably give my right arm to have leaders 1/10 the caliber that they were, right? You look at what's going on in our government, you got, I don't know if you're following the Trump thing with the Cohen and everything else, right? But it's been before that. I mean, it's just, you don't know who the bad guys are and the good guys anymore. I don't like Cohen, I don't like Mueller. I think they're all criminals. It seems like money and power seem to corrupt, and I wish I had the answer to that. So, we've got all these problems that we're trying to take care of. Where are we now as a country? Well, we're not the greatest country in the world anymore, unfortunately, other than for bad things. Yes, we do lead the world. We do lead the world in many, many bad things. It's sad, right? But it's true. I mean, let's look at a few of the things, right? Can anybody name some of the things we lead the world in right now? That's what I had at the last speak. Someone had said incarceration rate. That's one of them. Indebtedness, more police shootings per capita than any country in the world, and sometimes by orders of magnitude, right? 100 times more, 1,000 times more in some of the smaller countries, right? More killings per capita, more overall number of crimes, but barely in the top 100 for murder per capita. We come in about halfway down the list of countries at about 94. That's an interesting point, all right? Incarceration rate, as someone said, does anyone know how many people we incarcerate in the United States, percentage-wise? No, currently. Let me rephrase that. So, world population, right? How many people, percentage-wise, do we incarcerate in the United States of the world population? Yeah. Yeah. It turns out that we have 4.4% of the world's people, yet 22% of the world's incarcerated are in the United States. It's a 5-to-1 disparity. So you're going to tell me that people in the United States are 5 times worse than elsewhere in the country on average? I don't think so. There's a reason for that. There's many reasons for it, actually. So, and we have a graphic, which pretend that's up there. So it's a 5-to-1 ratio, almost exactly a 5-to-1 ratio. The last three that I just mentioned, right? So we had more killings per capita, highest overall number of crimes and incarceration rate. Those last three are related to what is actually the number one problem in the United States right now, which is our legal system. And the reason, here's why it is the number one problem. Because unemployment, for example, only directly affects people of a working age. Obesity only affects people that kind of choose to be unfit. You can sort of, there's all these problems that we have that only affect segments of the population. The legal system, on the other hand, basically can strike anyone at any time. Anyone with a pulse, you can be hit by the legal system. Even if you don't have a pulse, you can be hit by the legal system. Right? We get our probate courts and everything else. I mean, that's a whole can of worms in itself, right? So we've got all these systems out there not working for you and me. They're working against us. So let's take a look at the last two on that list of 5 specifically. They kind of go hand in hand. The one when I mentioned the murder rate and the crime rate. The murder rate, or the real crime rate, is relatively low, but our overall crime rate is high. So this data suggests that many crimes exist merely to benefit the system, right? We've got members of the system that are profiting from me and you every day. So how many people here know that we have privatized prisons here in the United States? Okay, a lot of people know that. That's typical. How many people also know that roughly 2/3 of them have an 80% or higher occupancy rate written into their contract? Yeah, not many people know this. This is you folks are following the trend. That's a fact. Many of them have a 90% occupancy rate written into their contract. What does that mean? Well, the system's incentivized to put people in the black bar hotel. That's what that means. One body, boom, in. One body, in. That's one of the problems, all right? So with respect to police, let's focus on the police for a second. Does anyone know how many state and local law enforcement agencies, active police, we have in the United States right now? Anyone take a guess on that? Excuse me? No. No, much higher. The whole United States, law enforcement. It's close to 1 million. Close to 1 million. Actually, we might be over 1 million now. I looked at the data several months ago, and it's rising every year. So we're probably, if we haven't eclipsed 1 million, we're close now. Persons. Persons. That's what I meant, yes. Persons. Active people, whether it's, federal police, state police, town police, at all levels, right? So, all right, with that number in mind, let's think about this now. They're all hypothetical. This is all hypothetical. If you have 100 people in a room, let's figure we have 100 people in a room, and we have 1% of them are bad people. How many people is that? Just one. Just one. Let's project that onto the police force. Let's use that same 1%. Let's be ultra conservative. Now, when I say bad, all right? When I say bad, I'm talking, not, just killing innocent people. I'm talking about falsifying police reports, just doing things that aren't quite honest. Let's use that same 1%. You're looking at over 10,000 people that are sworn to protect us that aren't doing their job. Whether they're threatening your life, whether they're giving you speeding tickets or false DUIs. I've known a couple of people that have gotten false DUIs. These are the people that are working for us. Now, I'm not going to paint with a broad brush, but I think we can do a much better job without the police. How did we get to where we were as a society today, right? Thousands of years we've been on the planet. Police are relatively new. It was only in the late 1800s, right? First police was in Chicago, 1880-something, right? We survived without them. I think we can do a much better job. Private citizens, private police force, the what do you call it, National Guard, in case of emergency, you have the National Guard, so there's a lot of overlap. So I think we're made to believe we need them far often than we don't. I mean, how many people here would go out and kill somebody if there was no police? Probably not many of us, right? We'd probably live our daily lives. So I think that's way overrated. Go ahead.
Well, wasn't there like a huge paradigm shift? Was it the 70s when they moved peace officers to law enforcement officers?
Don't know. I don't know that. Maybe there was, yeah. Yeah.
So
responsibility.
Peace,
yeah.
It was, we've got all these statutes and codes, we're going to enforce, and we're going to generate revenue by enforcing these statutes and codes.
It could be. I mean, that's the trend where incarceration jumped. If you look at the data, it's late 70s, early 80s. We went from low, and all of a sudden it goes, choom, way up, right at that point. There's a breakover voltage, or whatever you want to call it, right there. It's boom. So it could be related. Absolutely. Absolutely. Does anyone remember in 2014, while we're on the subject, where was it? Acapulco, Mexico, when the police went on strike? Does anyone remember that? All right. So the police thought they had the city by the and they went on strike, right? Well, guess what the people of the city did? They picked up the slack. They didn't vote them back in. They stayed out. Guess what happened to the crime rate? It actually stayed about the same. It didn't drop, stayed the same, but the traffic flowed a lot better. And the city saved tons of money because they're not paying these people for service. So we gotta, just because something is jammed down your throat, you gotta rethink things, right? I'm anti everything, anti big business, anti big government. I think when you take competition out of the picture, you lose a lot. And that's what we have today. We have a legal system with no competition. That's probably 50% of the problem. So, the whole thing about police, I'm not anti-police. I'm anti-police, but I'm not anti-policing. There's a difference, right? So anyhow, that was that story. And keep in mind, the founders had no, this again is not constitutional. You're not going to find this anywhere in the Constitution. And again, we can do a far better job in other ways. So, anyone care to guess how many laws we have in the United States? It seems that way. It seems that way.
How do you count a law?
Anything.
One law is like 50 different regulations.
Right. Yeah. Well, you get the CFR, right? You get the U.S. Code. You get the state laws. Well, conservatively, it's 1 million. That's a it's probably over 2 million, really, when you add up all the laws. And we're supposed to know these laws, right? They say what? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. I love that quote. Yeah, ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's taken way out of context. That came from colonial times, when you had about 100 or less laws in the books. Okay, you should know the laws. So they're taking that way out of context. No longer applies. So, again, this is one of the problems with the system. We have no competition. We have too many laws. We also have the prison industrial complex, where these people are in prison. They manufacture things. Unicor, for example, manufacture things at pennies per day. No vacation, no 401k plans, right? So they call it a captive audience. They're going to do what they tell them. You've got no choice. That's a problem. The 3 strikes laws, that's a problem. The prosecutorial immunity, judicial immunity, that's a problem. So we've got all these things, and again, no competition is probably 50% of the problem. So what can be done, right? We've laid out all these problems. What can be done to attack this rampant corruption within our judicial system and restore it to what the framers envisioned, right? So I like to make an analogy of a table. You need, this is not a table. This has 4 legs. You need 3 legs at least to make a table stand, right? To get this table of justice righted, we need 3 things. We need education, we need unification, and we need implementation. We need those 3 things. The education, we've got nailed in our book, our blog, our show. We've got some great shows. She'll tell you about that in a second. The unification is kind of what we're doing a little today. Small audience, but small can grow. This is what we need to do. We need to unify. And what I think is the biggest detriment here in the United States as Americans is implementation, getting people off their ass, off of Facebook of complaining and actually doing stuff. That's where Europe runs circles around us. Most countries run circles around us. That's what we've got to change, that mentality. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to let Sarah take over now. She's the brains. I'm the bronze. I'm going to take over.
So, regarding our book, it was actually the first piece of our project, and it began years ago. Tom and I are both from the East Coast. We're both from Boston. And we met each other.
Perfect. Keep that in mind.
Where's your accent?
I know I don't have the glorious accent that Tom does. I wasn't there long enough to develop that.
Quit rubbing it in.
So Tom and I were fortunate enough to meet each other back in April of 2015, and I loved the idea of what he was doing, why he was doing it, and as an attorney who actually works in the system every day, I was very impressed that somebody who was not a lawyer and not a part of the legal system cared this much about exposing it for what it is and educating people and wanting it to change. So we were very like-minded in that way. And like I said before, this project and the motivation for it came a long time before we actually got together and started working on it. The motivation was there because I saw quickly into being a lawyer how the practice of law was so different from what I thought it was going to be when I was in law school and envisioning myself as this idealistic moral champion who was going to help people and bring them justice. And you quickly realize that we have a pay-to-play system. If you don't have money, you're not going to win, and the justice system is not going to work for you. So this project took well over 3,000 hours. It has taken it took well over a year to write and rewrite, probably 100 times.
Oh, the book you're talking about?
Yeah. And we're still editing it. I think we're, in our 10th edit. So why do we write the book? The point was to reach the most amount of people as possible. We wanted to spread the message and to help educate people and empower them ideally before they get involved and entangled in the system. Ideally, the book is best to be read cover to cover as a eye-opener of what it's like. And then once you actually need... Preventative guide, exactly. That's what I was looking for. And then used as a reference later. We were fortunate enough to get the backing of Dr. Ron Paul, who wrote an amazing foreword for our book. We have been endorsed by Senator Marco Rubio, noted whistleblower and CIA agent John Kiriakou. As far as we know, there's nothing out there like this book. We don't leave any stone unturned. And on that note, I'm going to let Tom discuss what exactly we mean by leaving no stone unturned.
Don't go away. Basically, does anyone remember the movie Enemy of the State? All right. Do you remember when Gene Hackman is they're going through clothing and they're getting ready to do their thing with the FBI and everybody else, and they're talking back and forth, and he mentions guerrilla warfare. Well, guerrilla warfare basically is when you attack someone, you're much smaller than they are. They're much larger. They're slow. You're quick. They're strong. You're weak. But you take their weapons from them, slowly but surely, and you use it against them. You become stronger. They become weaker. That's what our project is all about. That's all the stuff we write about in our book. You can not find anything in there. And even on our blog, everything on our blog, I recommend, I don't care if you don't buy our book, get on our blog today. We're putting stuff that the mainstream media is not covering at all. We post once a month, and this is stuff that's eye-opening, and it's also guerrilla warfare. So everything that we do is to help you get the biggest advantage. And that's the point I wanted to make about this, what we're doing. Everything is guerrilla warfare. It's like, we don't march like the British in straight line. We're hiding behind stuff, and we're shooting when we can. So that's how you beat the system. That's one of the ways to beat the system.
So like I said earlier, this is a once-in-a-lifetime book. It was a massive project. It's taken over 3,000 hours to compile and to present to everyone. There's no other agenda that we have besides helping you and empowering you to protect yourself and hopefully to make a difference in the system and change it. The first two parts of the book are like a glorified orientation session. And then the third part of the book covers areas of law that most people will almost certainly encounter in their life. There were a couple of challenges in writing this book. One of them was to jam as much information as possible into the least amount of pages, which was difficult, and we're, as I said, still working on that and cutting it down and getting it fine-tuned. Also, we wanted to write the book in such a way that a seasoned attorney can learn from it, as well as a novice who knows nothing about the legal system and maybe nothing about how the legal system works in this country. And then as well, we wanted to write it generically, but also make it applicable to different states, as well as the federal level. And our project is unique because we have a lawyer and a non-lawyer writing about the legal system. So you have somebody who's inside and somebody who's outside. So you get a 360-degree view of what the legal system is like and what an insider perspective can share and an outside perspective as well. Also, we have the male-female perspective, which I think is important. I think, gender plays a big part in how people experience the system, how people see the system, how people from the outside view us as women and men. Also, more heads are always better than one. Whenever you have a constructive project, you want to have multiple inputs and to be able to see things from different angles. The blog is www.stloyf.com.
IYF. Stack the legal odds in your favor if you want to talk about it. .com. Take the first letter of each word.
I always have problems saying that.
/blog. You can do that too, yeah.
Yeah, if you Google stack the legal odds in your favor, the website will come up, and the website has the blog on there, and it can be found from... Yeah, okay. Okay, great. So, as I said earlier, we're both here today because we want to change the system. We want a legal system that will work for everybody, not just people who are fortunate enough to have money to get out of their legal problems more successfully than people who don't have money. We want to change the system and hopefully have it be a real justice system. And as I said before, not a just us system that is helping police, lawyers, judges, and other corrupt, rogue people. We have some stories for you that we'd like to share. If you guys want to hear some interesting head turners.
First is amazing. I mean, you gotta listen to this story, and this can happen to you.
So I had a good friend who inadvertently turned into a client last year. She was walking her service dog on the beach in Dana Point, and there was a sign explicitly on the beach saying that there are no pets allowed on the beach, but there was an explicit exception for service animals. Well, my girlfriend, her dog is a registered service animal, and she was stopped by, I think it was the Parks and Recreation officer, who came by and said, "Ma'am, it's illegal to walk your animal on the beach. I'm going to have to write you a ticket." And she said, "Officer, my dog is a service dog." And she didn't happen to have the harness on him, but she had a picture of the ticket on her phone, the ID tag. And she was trying to get her phone to show the officer that my dog's registered as a service dog. There shouldn't be an issue here. Officer didn't care, issued her a ticket.
So that's the first mistake I made. That's one.
So fast forward to a few months later, she was stopped at a intersection because an officer said that she rolled a stop sign. She was issued a ticket for rolling a stop sign. The cop pulls up her background, sees that there's a bench warrant out for her arrest. Comes back, lets her know, "Ma'am, there's actually a bench warrant out for your arrest." And she starts laughing, and she was like, "There's no way." She was like, "I've never done anything wrong. There's no way this is not possible." So she was arrested, hauled away. She wasn't read her Miranda rights. She was, pretty much manhandled and shoved into the back of a police car. Mind you, this is in Dana Point, Orange County.
So that's what I'm
Yep. Yeah. So she was on her way to her son's 8th birthday party. So not only did she miss her son's 8th birthday party, but she spent a night in jail for walking a service animal that she was allowed to under law. So there were a couple of mistakes that were made in this case by the legal system, and
then don't forget with it, she went to find out about the ticket and then the mail.
yeah, so she got the notice. She goes to the court on the day it says to appear and pay the ticket. She goes 2 months. Huh?
Yeah.
This is for the dog. Yeah. So she goes to court to pay the ticket. The clerk at the counter says, "Ma'am, your citation has not been entered. Just check online, and it's up to you to follow this." So 2 months after the fact, it's not in the system. Also, when the officer wrote the ticket, he didn't write her apartment number. So when she was supposed to receive the mail to let her know that she actually had to appear at court and plead, she never received anything in the mail to let her know that there was a hearing in April, and that because she didn't appear, she was now, the city attorney issued a bench warrant for her arrest. So several mistakes were made, but it goes to show you that a normal, law-abiding, perfectly well-intentioned person who is a mother, has her own business, has never been in trouble with the legal system, has never had issues, ended up in jail. And when she finally did, 36 hours later, get to appear in front of the judge, the prosecutor, the city attorney who was, the prosecutor in this case, encouraged her to plead guilty to a crime that she didn't commit and she didn't do anything wrong. And so she did it. She pled guilty because the guy said, hey, if you plead guilty, you can get out right now. And so she was just, she hadn't eaten, she hadn't drank. She was just traumatized from being in prison.
Is there anything wrong with that? The prosecutor telling them to do that?
It's a huge, huge breach of our ethical duties as attorneys. It goes against the rules of professional conduct. So anyway, she pled guilty. And then once she got out, she told me about the story. And I, of course, said, why did you plead guilty? You didn't do anything wrong. You should have never been ticketed or gone to jail. So I filed a motion for her to withdraw her guilty plea. And, we won that motion and her record was cleared. But why did she have to go through spending a night in jail, missing her son's 8th birthday party, and just being traumatized? She said, Sarah, I was in prison with, burglars, drug dealers, crackheads, prostitutes, and they just kept looking at me and pushing me around and saying, what are you doing in here? You're too pretty to be in here. And she said, I was just terrified. She was like, there was a room half the size with 30 or 40 women in it. And there's one bathroom in the middle of the room. And she said, I knew that I wasn't going to consume anything because whatever comes in has to go out. So she's like, I just, didn't do anything for those 36 hours. So that's a one, I think, eye-opening story about how anybody can be negatively impacted by the legal system. And to me, it was personally shocking, maybe because she was my friend too, and I know her. So Tom's got some other great stories.
Just to expound on what Sarah just said, though, you got to think too that's the 5 mistakes that we can count, right? Doesn't mean it's all inclusive, right? They could have done other things illegal or made mistakes that we don't know about. And what she just described happens in every court, in every state, every day in the United States. None are immune. Criminal system's corrupt, family court system's corrupt, traffic court system's corrupt, small claims court system's corrupt. And I can name you examples. I've got experience in 4 different states, East Coast, West Coast, all over the place. Go ahead.
Can I ask something real quick?
Yeah.
Since the whole system is really just there, or is lost to extract money, really?
Most of the time. Yeah.
And I've read almost all of your book, by the way, and it's excellent.
Oh, thank you for that, yeah.
Yes, excellent. And one of the things that I really got from it was that, you can use how poorly put together and how poorly it operates the system against itself.
Yeah.
If it's really, at the end of the day, just always wanting to extract money, like, for instance, that dog ticket, really all they just want the money.
That's all they want, yeah.
And if you can swallow that and go, okay, well, that's what it's all really about, I guess what I'm asking is, would you suggest that, really the best way to go about dealing with it is in some way trying to appease them by somehow paying it, but make for instance, you give suggestions in the book about how you home things. They'll always work with you if you want to pay them in monthly payments.
Yes.
Oh, you'll pay us $5 a month. Okay, well,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So is that really the best way to go about it? Because otherwise, if you try to completely go, I'm not going to deal with this, then you get bench warrant.
Right, right, yeah. But see, in her case, everything was like she was blindsided, right, in this particular instance. But you're right. I mean, like, if you've read the book, you know, like with traffic cases and criminal cases, it's the only two cases in this country where you actually fight the system directly. You fight it in all legal battles, but it's the only one where you fight it directly. And there's bargaining, right? You have plea bargaining, as we say, in the criminal system. And in the crowded traffic courts, you can do the same thing. They just want their money. You have a $500 ticket. Well, should we go to trial and risk losing, says the U.S. government, or should we just reduce it to $250 and take them quick money outright? And that's where the strength comes in. That's where you can, you know, I mean, assuming you have no chance of winning, right? I mean, but if you've read the traffic chapter, which is our heaviest chapter, you'll see we really go through. But probably over 90%, I'm probably being conservative, of every case in the United States comes down to money. And it has to, because every one of these industries, family court is multi-billion, traffic court is 5 to 10 billion, criminal court is multi-billion, probate is multi-billion. You add all these together, you're probably looking at $300 billion industry a year. So yes, I mean, the focus, unfortunately, is money most of the time. And in fact, we spoke at the Libertarian Convention last couple of weeks ago, I guess. And one of these guys from New York, Larry Sharp, comes up to me, and he's now a defense attorney. And a lot of these prosecutors become defense attorneys. We like that. Like Sarah and I, for example, when if we were up here talking 20 years ago, I was very pro-death penalty and very anti-scumbag criminal defense attorney. I've come 180 degrees. And this guy, Larry, was one of those people. He is a prosecutor, and he became a defense attorney. He says to me, he says, if you can write a 6-figure check, you're going to get a fair trial and a fair sentence. If you can write a 7-figure check, you're innocent. Well, let's look at it. O.J. Simpson, first trial, innocent, right? Michael Jackson, innocent. Robert Blake, innocent. Wow, that's pretty good. Look at the coincidence, right? But if you can't write the 6-figure check, you're guilty. Money is such a bad thing when you think about it. Money and power. But I would say, yeah, conservatively, 90% of the people, 90% of the cases, rather, in this country are motivated financially in the United States court. So let me just tell you a little bit about my story. Probably just as crazy as hers. You know, they say, mine is in what I call the beloved People's Republic of Massachusetts, which actually kind of spawned this, partially spawned our project, our book, our blog, and everything else. I had a case that started in 2005 in a civil court. Small contract case. And you know how they say sometimes, what you're giving us as facts are just too unbelievable. The story can't be true. Well, mine, the facts are so outrageous, it can't not be true. It's that ridiculous. And again, I'm not unique. I mean, we got a network nationwide. I could tell you stories in Washington State about our colleagues, in Florida, Washington, Ohio, and even attorneys. The system will turn on attorneys if you go against the bureaucracy, and this more than you think. So you got this big bureaucracy that we're fighting. But anyhow, so my case started in 2005, simple traffic case, filed in the civil court in Taunton, which is the most corrupt court. They're all corrupt in the People's Republic of Massachusetts. I've been in 6 courts. 3 states you don't want to live in: Massachusetts, Ohio, and Washington. They get the blue ribbon. They're 3-way tie for the blue ribbon. All right? They're all states in this country are corrupt, but those 3 you don't want to live in. So this case was filed, and instead of the defense attorney filing an answer and a counterclaim, which is, legal pleadings that you can file in a case, he decided to influence my attorneys to quit the case. He pressured them into quitting the case. That's actually a felony in Massachusetts. It's called obstruction of justice. He did it 4 times. Now, this guy's an attorney. So instead of putting in the effort to file as he should have, he ran his mouth and committed felonies. So anyhow, he did this for X amount of years. Finally, I got a motion for a default judgment because he didn't take any legal action. He did everything illegal in the case, right? So I filed a motion. Now all of a sudden, corruption starts creeping in the case, and I can see why, and I'll get to that in a second. So I had a default judgment for $11,000. He called the court crying because he never filed any paperwork with the case, no pleadings. So they vacated it over the phone to him as a favor. And the reason I know this is because I got an email the day before he called the court saying, "Oh, we made an error. It's been vacated. According to our file, you have to have this heard by a judge, we have to have a motion, all this, that, and the other. None of that was true. And the reason I know he made this phone call is because I had given my U.S. mailing address, a U.S. mailing address, to the court several weeks prior, which he must have gotten from the court, because 2 weeks later, at that mailing address, I got something from this attorney, and that's not searchable in any database. So I know he called the court. So they violated rules of procedure. He also, like I said, obstruction of justice, violated rules of conspiracy to commit fraud. They modified the court record because they vacated 3 times the judgment against me. There was no motion in October of that year, but yet in November there's an entry in the docket by some chief judge at that court vacating an already vacated judgment. Maybe it was going to somehow unvacate itself. So he ruled on this motion again. So, I filed a complaint with the Commission on Judicial Conduct, the FBI, DOJ, the Board of Overseas. Now I find out this lawyer is connected with Scott Brown, former U.S. Senator. Right? He also ran for state senate. So he's got political connections, right? So every time I go into court, he perjures himself, and I can prove this over and over again. So, I'm going through all of this. What they do is they have a jury, they have a trial, quote unquote. I told them I couldn't make it. They have the trial anyway. They ripped the $11,000 out of my hand. They put 30-something thousand in his hands because of a fraudulent counterclaim and answer that he filed. Then I immediately file a motion. I said, look, I want to have this heard in the summer of 2016 because I'm not going to be in the area. What do? They have it in March, clandestinely, with the attorney, right? I'm not present. Oh, he's not here. I guess it's okay. Boom. They rule against me again. I go to the appellate court. Now, there's misprisioning of felony. Don't forget. Now, all the judges that are ruling for him are ignoring the elephant in the room, which is all the laws and crimes that these people have committed. That's misprisioning of a felony. So, top to bottom, soup to nuts, I got these people stone cold. Now I'm in the Supreme Court with a petition for interlocutory relief. I don't know how it's going to end. But and that's, again, the tip of the iceberg. I want to have questions and answers. But I mean, it's wildly, wildly corrupt. And you have to know the laws. You have to know the rules to know when they're breaking them. Otherwise, I was in court many times as a kid, and they broke the rules. Now I look back and I see it, but I didn't know it then. So that's pretty much all we have today. Questions and answers. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
If your case goes to the Supreme Court and they rule against you, what will you do?
I just won't pay the judgment. I don't have anything in my name anymore. I've already thought, and we talk about this in the book. So they're not going to get me. I'm too smart for them.
And you're publishing.
Excuse me?
And you're publishing.
I've got a red bullseye on my back right now. I had the cops show up at my old house, and they had their hands on their guns. They're going to shoot me and dump my body in a swamp if they can catch me, but they're not going to catch me.
Did you give them a copy?
I want to send an autograph copy. You should see the pleadings I send to the court right now. They're worth a read. I sent one with April Fool's. It actually had an April Fool's date on it. Go ahead.
Real quick, the one thing that struck me real about the legal system is the civil system. A business harms someone's property, usually you sue and collect damages and get a judgment, but they stop doing that activity. It doesn't happen in big business, especially energy. Where did that go wrong? Where you can no longer collect on a judgment or enforce a judgment against a big company that's hurt people's property, hurt people's livelihood?
Enforcing a judgment? Well, because there's exceptions. Don't forget, like for a home, you can homestead your home. For business, I'm not sure on the details, but personally, there's all these federal and state limits. So enforcing a judgment is not always that easy. And that's what they're trying to do to me. They got this fraudulent judgment they're trying to enforce, but they can't. I mean, they're not going to get the money from anywhere.
I know in Texas you can't collect on civil judgment realistically.
Oh, is that right? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's fraud, sue somebody for business fraud and actually being able to collect on that, it just doesn't happen.
It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, a judgment is only as good as that piece of paper.
Yeah.
That's all it means, because to actually collect on it and see any money from it, it's rare.
And in a free market, I thought that's how the market regulates itself. Is, businesses do bad, you sue them, they have to stop.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to work that way.
Yeah, we have 1 minute. Go ahead, last question. We can talk outside. Excuse me?
What's the title of your book?
Stack the legal odds in your favor. Understand America's corrupt judicial system. Protect yourself now and boost chances of winning cases later. Yeah, we'll be outside to talk. We're going to have to wrap. But that's all I have, Will you be prepared? Not if, but when the legal system strikes. Thank you for having us.